Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nutpanit Nakpitaks Arjam, Associate Director of the Environment and Climate Change Initiative, FHI 360, Asia Pacific region. On behalf of FHI 360 and Future Minds Network, I welcome you to the PMAC 2023 main session, Elevating the Voices of Young People for Climate Action. The UN estimates that there are 3.7 billion people below the age of 30, representing 48% of the global population. This is the largest generation of youth in history. By 2025, Gen Z will exceed 30% of the global workforce. Young people are showing a deep understanding and engagement with the issue of climate change. A recent survey by the Pew Research Center found that young people see climate change as a looming economic and security threat, and they would be willing to make at least some changes to their work and life to help tackle the problem. This is indeed good news. In fact, young people today are reading and engaging with climate and biodiversity science and policy in a way that previous generations have not. But despite their engagement and willing to take action, young people are still portrayed as disengaged from civic action for climate change, and that there is a lack of consensus on the best ways to solve the problem. This youth-led and action-focused sessions aim to inspire and raise the voices of young people. It is also a platform to discuss how we can increase young people's participation in addressing climate and health crisis, restore trust, and gain consensus on solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, let's work together with youth, a generation that cares and is willing to take action. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator of today's session, Nathaniel Dong. Nathaniel is an award-winning youth advocate, startup advisor, and CEO of Future Minds Network. In 2022, he was named as Asia's most influential entrepreneurs in Forbes 30 Under 30. His social enterprise, Future Minds Network, has helped thousands of youth globally to build their own business, charity, and enterprise. Nathaniel, I invite you to please introduce the structure and panelists of today's session. The stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. How are we feeling? It's good to be here today. Look, I can't lie and say that I'm very awake right now. It's 8 a.m. and I'm sure we're all half asleep. So I can see some people nodding off in the back there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get everybody to stand up with me right now. And I'm going to pull you all to the front slowly. So we're going to spend a lot of our activity today on these round tables. And what you'll notice on each of these tables is there's a topic there. So there's everything from air pollution to mental health to workforce training. And I'm going to get everybody to come forward and come pick a table. All right. Yeah, so grab your stuff with you as well, because we'll be here for the rest of it. Okay. And I'm going to get you to stay standing for a bit, because we're going to run a really quick activity. Awesome. Panelists, come up too. Not to the stage, just come forward. Yep. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So, I've come all the way from sunny Australia in Melbourne, and we have this one activity that we do. It's a bit of a legendary activity, and you'll either love this or you're going to hate this. So, with everyone still standing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to, there are 2 rules in this activity. The first is you just copy everything that I do, and the second is each time we repeat what we do, we get louder. And we want to be so loud and have so much energy that the rooms next door are going to be wondering what's happening in this room, okay? Everyone understand that? Cool. All right, so we're going to start like this. I am a coconut. Cut me in half. Give some to me. Give some to you. And we're going to go again, and we're going to go louder. I am a coconut. Cut me in half. Give some to me. Give some to you. I am a coconut. Come on, louder. Cut me in half. Give some to me. Give some to you. 2 more times. I am a coconut. Cut me in half. Give some to me. Give some to you. And last time. I am a coconut. Cut me in half. Give some to me. Give some to you. And now shake your arms out. I'll get everyone to sit back down. Beautiful. So, aside from making you all feel really awkward doing that activity, the reason I did this was one of the first lessons that we're going to talk about today. Gen Z are not afraid to do things differently. My name's Nathaniel, and I'm going to reintroduce myself. We do things differently at Future Minds, and what we're doing is we're bridging the gap between Gen Z and the world. Today, we've helped over 11,000 young people to find employment or create their own through starting businesses that drive the local economy. We've also worked with CEOs and corporates in 36 countries across the world to understand how do we attract and develop efficient workforces. We've worked with Ferrero Rocher, Google, Apple, and we focus on mobilizing young people to create change within organizations. We've worked with policymakers, like many of you, and governments across the world to put young people at the center of decision-making, to improve youth engagement, employment, and entrepreneurship. In all the work we do, our common link is learning to work with young people and this new workforce. You might be wondering, what do young people actually have to do with solving health issues, with solving climate change? Ooh, there we go. My bad. With solving climate change and the environment. Well, a lot actually. And the first thing that we know is that whether we like it or not, they're going to be our future doctors, our future decision makers, and our future leaders. And hopefully future technicians, because I'm struggling with these slides. All right. And one thing that we know is, as John mentioned, we're living in a world with the biggest population of youth in history. By 2025, Gen Z is going to exceed 30% of the global workforce. And so tides are changing. Even the world's biggest brands are realizing that we need to understand Gen Z's unique skills and find ways for us to create intergenerational action, because we can't do it alone. So we're here today to answer 3 important questions, all right? Why, how, and what? So digging deeper, we're answering why do young people play such a critical role in solving these crises? Why does it matter? How can we leverage Gen Z to create competitive advantage? How can we invest in their unique skills? How can we learn from the approach to solving problems? And what? What are the steps we can take tomorrow? So I can tell you now that if you stay, you'll leave this conference having ideas, actions, and a plan to engage young people meaningfully. That's one thing I'll promise. And so right now, we're going to spend the next hour chatting with young leaders across the world, really getting to understand young people and what they're doing, how they're self-organizing and creating change in the world across climate change, across health, and the environment. And so we actually have panelists from 7 different countries who sit across different intersections and come from deep lived expertise. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. So I'll get our panelists over there to come slowly to the stage. And first, I'm going to introduce Omnia. So we have Omnia all the way from sunny Cairo. Omnia is the COP27, the first youth envoy to the COP27 presidency. And so she's represented millions of young people on a global stage. She's also a medical doctor. She's the child my parents always wanted. Omnia, can I get you to come up? Beautiful. Give a warm round of applause. I'll get you to sit on the second seat. Okay. Next we have Lagi. Lagi is from the islands of Fiji, and he is our expert on mental health. Not only does he run one of the biggest youth-led organizations in Fiji, but is here representing the Pacific Island Climate Action Network, which does amazing work, which he's going to tell you about very soon. Welcome, Lagi. Next, we have Mai, a program manager at the UN and also the co-founder of Environment. Mai is from Bangkok and has been doing amazing stuff, doing sustainability, reporting, and journalism. Let's welcome Mai. I'm really making you work with the clapping. Thank you for doing it. We have Srisha from Nepal, who's representing FHI as the Social Change, Behavior, and Communications Officer. She is our expert on air pollution and is going to tell you a lot more about it soon. Mohammed Isa from Alexandria, Egypt. Mohammed represents and is the liaison officer for the International Federation of Medical Students Association. I'm from Australia. And Mohammed represents over 1.3 million young healthcare professionals. He is an amazing speaker, and you're going to hear more about his expertise in infectious diseases and health systems very shortly. Come up, Mohammed. Last but not least, we have Bam as well, the founder of What a Why, and she does some amazing work in workforce training and understanding how we can bring young people into the workforce. Awesome. Whoop. And we have me too, who you know. Okay. Give me 1 second to sort out a technical issue. Okay, beautiful. So, I've introduced you a little bit, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, for them to get to know you a bit better. So I'm going to start at the very end. Bam, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, everyone. My name is Bam Tivipakitika. I am a founder of What a Why. What we do is that we try to encourage people to be actively curious in everyday life. And right now, I am also Shaper, as in Global Shaper Bangkok Initiative by World Economic Forum as well. Thank you.
So hi everyone, I'm Omnaya Lamrani. I am a medical doctor and I recently got appointed as the youth envoy for the COP27, which is the UN climate conference. And my country was the host for this year. So I work mainly with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I've been also working in the climate and health space for 6 years. So I'm really happy to be back again.
Bula Vinaka, my name is Lavetna Langi. You can call me Langi. I'm from Fiji and I work with the Pacific Islands Climate Action Network as well as the youth network called the Alliance for Future Generations. My background is in gender, human rights, and youth development, and of course, climate change. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wilawan Panyang, or you can call me Mai. I am the co-founder and the CEO of the Environment, which is well known as media in Thailand, the environmental media in Thailand. So we have almost millions of followers on the Facebook to post about the environmental terms and other topics about the good health and well-being. So thank you, Nathan, for me, the peers of the UNODC, but I left CP to run my business. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shrisha Nagpa. Right now, I'm working as a Social and Behavior Change Communication Officer at FHI 360. I've been working in the environmental field for almost 8 years, mostly working with local government and communities. And right now, our project USA Clean Air, we're working on air pollution to bring like the government, the civil society, and the private sector to find solutions. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mohammed. I'm from Egypt, a medical student for 1 more month. I'm, as Nathaniel mentioned, the liaison officer for public health issues at the IFMSA, and have been working for a while at WHO Egypt as climate change and COVID-19 youth associate, and has been volunteering in the public health field, I would say, since 2017, so 6 years. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. I feel like I'm on a panel of the Avengers. We're all just assemble. Okay, I'm going to jump straight into it, okay? And I'm going to start with a couple of tough questions. So Omnia, you're the first one up, okay? So when we look at Gen Z, many believe that referring to Gen Z as change makers or leaders or experts is a big marketing campaign, particularly policymakers, like when we see them continually exclude young people from climate change and processes like COP. So what do you think that young people can do to change this perspective? And do you think it's just a marketing campaign?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is what we had personally seen. I've been to the last 3 climate change conferences, and COP27 was my 4th. And I was lucky to be part of a country that truly believes in the importance of meaningful and practical ways of integrating young people. Because throughout the past 7 years, the challenges that I've seen with myself and many youth-led organizations, that yes, we got invited to events, to panels, to conferences like COP, but all we do is speak and then nothing happens. No sustainable follow-up becomes in that. Maybe we can be part of a social media campaign and then we do not get anything afterwards. No integration in the design of this campaign or this event or this initiative. And it's also important that to highlight that many young people don't also get compensation, even though we all work as volunteers and it's also our time. But to really change that, this is what my presidency had as a vision, which is to not just appoint a youth envoy and the first young member part of a presidency that facilitates the negotiation process with countries and political leaders and ministers, but to really find ways to place young people as partners and as equal stakeholders in every discussion that we did at COP.
Yeah, awesome, Omnia. And I really like your point about making young people partners. And so I'm really curious, Mohammed, you're in a very traditional sector of healthcare, right? And often what we see is young people are often on very much the bottom echelons of the hierarchy. So when it comes to healthcare and getting young people involved, what can they do? Can they really make any meaningful action when they have no power?
I would say yes, we can make influence, but we need more in order to do the ideal influence, I would say. Because, for example, we as future healthcare professionals, I would say, we're part of the health workforce. We're part of I would say we're one of the building blocks of the health systems, actually. And it's not just the healthcare professionals who do the work, but it's the future healthcare professionals who are being equipped and being capacitated in order to be able to contribute better to the healthcare systems. So I believe that what is required, what are we doing at the moment, is the peer-to-peer education. We're working together, we're trying to learn together, we're trying to equip ourselves with knowledge, skills, competencies, etc. This is, for example, what we do in the IFMSA. However, this is not enough because there must be investment in the future healthcare professionals in order for them, when they are in the position of being the decision makers, just even with patients or just even with the people that they meet every day in the hospitals, that they need to be ready enough with the required technical support, required financial support, and all the other enabling environment that must be present. In order generally for capacities to be built, there are 3 levels. the individual, the organizational, and the systemic. What we're doing at the moment is the individual, which is, I would say, the very most important thing. But what is much needed as well in order for the influence to be very impactful is that there must be organizational capacity building and systemic capacity building from all the other stakeholders, including us, by calling for the required actions from our side as healthcare professionals and from other members of the decision makers, I would say, scope. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned, I guess, those 3 different levels, including systemic. And so, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, a lot of the work that you do is around carbon credits, and that is a huge systemic issue, right? Realistically, we know that even government doesn't know what to do when it comes to solving carbon credits and pollution. So why do you think that young people are a missing piece of that puzzle if the government doesn't even know what to do?
Thank you for the questions. So I think because of the carbon credits, it's a topics that maybe the old topics, but I think in the 2023, so we have in my point of view, I think about the carbon credits. It is the solution to help solve the problem about the environment, because the credits, in my opinion, it's kind of like the benefits also. So I think the youth needs the big roles on to change about the carbon credits thing, because we can endorse them, or we can endorse their community or the people to do about the carbon projects, which means the carbon project is the projects that preserve the world or something like that, or solve about the problem about the environmental issue. So I think to do about the in terms of the carbon credits or the carbon project, need to use the power of youth, because of the youth can help to kind of like the micro learning, and then they can learn the hard thing and translate to the easy things, because the carbon credits is the hard topic, right? But I think the youth can bring the innovations, or can bring the words, the easy words, to make the people understand about the carbon projects. So I think this
Awesome.
is the
Yeah, I think you mentioned some very interesting points about how, I guess, as young people, they are often the first to think of more creative ideas rather than sticking to a traditional mold, right?
Yes, yes.
And like you said, like, there's ways that we can start to communicate this complexity better.
Yeah.
I'm curious from you, Srisha, because air pollution is also a huge systemic issue. When we're looking at things like more creative ideas for young people, do you think that, young people do bring some sort of creativity when they're leading this change against air pollution?
Yeah, definitely they do bring, and they have already brought some really creative solutions to air pollution. So when you talk about air pollution, you actually have to look at the sources of air pollution, like waste and fuel and all of that. And even in my country, when we look at, there are so many startups and companies that have been built by young people that are really bringing innovative solutions. Like 2 weeks ago, I was talking to this company called Alloy, which is a fintech company. And right now what they're doing is they are financing these micro entrepreneurs who can provide public transportation in Kathmandu Valley. Similarly, there's another company called Khali Sisi, again started by a young woman, which actually links these scrap collectors to households. So these are just some examples, but there are so many other examples of young people who are already finding solutions and bringing it already into life. So I think that's the power of young people, because they can already find those connections.
Yeah, awesome. So we've talked a little bit, I guess, about entrepreneurial action. We've talked a little bit about the traditional structures that we have, like in healthcare and things like that. But often when we think about young people, it's almost the default that we straight away think about activism and activists and people protesting or creating campaigns. So I'm really curious to hear from you, Lagi. In the Pacific region in particular, like over 50% of the population is aged under 23. You're going to be facing a lot of different issues like health outcomes, sustainable development, as well as peace and security. I'm going to throw you a curveball here. And so, we often see young people and think, oh, they can only be activists. They don't have the experience to make a real impact. Can climate activism, led by Gen Z, actually translate into concrete action? What can they actually do?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I really think that the generation-wide movement that we see across the world in terms of activism that's been led by young people is really building pressure, not only from the ground up, but also building pressure on our political leaders to make the kind of change that's needed to bring us to the Paris goals of 1.5 degrees. And I alluded to this yesterday when I said that 1.5 degrees for the Pacific is not a target. It is our lifeline. And for many communities, that's, it's our survival. It means security, well-being, and livelihoods. And so in, going back to the question around activism, we're seeing slowly that there is translation of these actions on the ground into policy, but there's still a lack of coherence between what's at the policy level and what's at the, what's being implemented in terms of projects and initiatives. So I think young people can, continue to build that pressure on political leaders, but also they have the power to also effect that change individually and, as a collective as well. So it's not only about, demanding change, but as you said earlier, you were showing it in the PowerPoint this morning, we represent a large block of the population, so we can actually effect that change from the individual level. So, but that requires support, that requires investment in young people, that requires resourcing, that requires education and training. And I think in many countries, especially in developing countries like in the Pacific, there's still this narrative that sees young people as tokens, that sees young people as sitting at the back of the rooms, you don't have a voice. And that's that's part, I think, it goes back to this patriarchal and cultural, society that we live in. And we need to change that.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. I picked up on something that you said around the investment that we have to make in young people. And so, Bam, you have a lot of experience looking into the workforce and how young people are involved. What sort of investment do we need to give young people in order for them to have the right skills to really contribute meaningfully? What does that look like?
Thank you for the questions. I think first I want to point out to youth as in people that making impact, because right now we can see a lot of talented people on the stage and everyone have a very interesting point. They care about a very different things. But right now, one of the point is that we can see a lot of growth outside of the company, outside of the community, but we have to be sometimes we feel lonely as an individuals to fight for something that we believe in, right? But what we can do as a company, as an organization, as a society, is that we can create a space for individual growth, space for exploration. Because each one of us, I believe that we are extremely strong individuals. We are creative. We have what it takes to make things better. So in my experience, what happened was that we tried to create a space inside the organizations that helps to incubate the younger generations and also help them to understand what is going on and then ask for their opinion to what they can do to make things better, to give the better solution. So they are just not something to solve, but they are the solution themselves.
Okay, all right. Thank you for answering the hard questions. Now I want to see the evidence, all right? So we've talked a lot about how amazing young people are, but in practice, what does that look like? My question for all of you is, what is really unique about their approach to solving these issues? What can companies harness and learn from this? So Shrisha, you talked a little bit about air pollution and what young people are doing. What can companies learn from their unique approach?
I think two things. One is we've already talked about is the creativity and the resourcefulness. So I think young people bring a different way of thinking, a different way of looking at the problem. So when someone who's been working on a field for like 20 years, they've already have a certain idea of this is what it is like. So when a new person comes in from a younger generation, they have a different way of thinking. They can find solutions, they can find connections that other people cannot. So even in the examples I've given earlier, so connecting waste workers to households, That's a creative solution using technology, by the way, through mobile apps. That's something that maybe an older person might not have thought about, but the younger people, they can do it. And they're so resourceful, they're so quick to do everything. They're like this. I'm so surprised by the resourcefulness of young people, and I think that's what they bring to the table.
Awesome. I'll invite other panelists to jump in here.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think what makes us unique is our approach when it comes to doing action, because as young people and throughout the past years, we always use a bottoms-up approach. Many people here understand the importance of listening to our people and to our communities and their needs, as well as listening to the evidence. But one good example of how important that was for us last year, because we were working with UNICEF to see how we can engage young people in Egypt to understand what climate change is and to prioritize that. And we thought that the main challenge that we would tackle is the lack of awareness. We organized a caravan that went across 26 cities all over Egypt. And we had a lot of awareness materials around what climate change is, both in English and in Arabic. And we were surprised that in every city we went to in Egypt, young people knew what climate change is. They had their own initiatives, their own creative solutions, both for climate adaptation and mitigation. And instead, we were able to change our approach. And at COP, we gave them the platform to showcase these solutions because they already had the understanding. It was more about changing our strategy to elevate their solutions, connect them with the partners that can provide them with mentorship, expertise, as well as funding to really elevate what they had to do and to be part of our country's national climate action in the lead up to COP as well as post-COP.
Lagi, I would love to invite you to share as well. Fiji is doing some really interesting things and involving young people in interesting ways. And I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think is unique about how young people are solving issues in Fiji or across the Pacific Islands in general? And what can we learn from this?
Thank you. Many people refer to the region and to our countries as small island developing states. In fact, one of the narratives we're changing is that we are not small, but we're actually large ocean states. And that alone places us geographically isolated from the rest of the world. But what's unique about this generation is that we are more connected than any other generation in history. And that the fact that we are connected through the World Wide Web, we are able to see other solutions that are taking place in other countries, and we're able to replicate that and contextualize that and implement it in our own countries. And in terms of solutions that's working, I mean, there's a whole list of what young people are doing, but I wanted to particularly focus on mental health because this is we're facing a poly-crisis, as many you've heard over the last few days, but in particular, there's a silent crisis, and this is the mental health. 1 out of every 4 people face mental health issues, and not so many intervention, especially when we talk about climate change, is looking into the mental health dimension. And this is impacting, the workforce productivity, this is impacting livelihoods, this is impacting, gender inequalities, economic inequalities in many ways. And, going back to the Pacific, we have a culture that sees this as a taboo. It sees this as a subject, because we are a very patriarchal society, men cannot express themselves, so they bottle it up. And so this is why after every climate disasters, because of the pressure on the head of household, that we continue to see one of the highest gender-based violence rates coming from the Pacific. And so it's all interlinked and intersected in many ways. And I think young people are creating safe spaces, creating virtual spaces to connect, to learn from each other, peer-to-peer learning, and creating virtual spaces and platforms for young people to reach out and access timely support for mental health.
Awesome. I'll invite you, Mohammed, as well, because we chatted initially about how traditional the healthcare sector is, right? And how difficult it is to navigate those systems of power. You told us very interesting those 3 levels that we have to operate at. The same question to you. What is the unique approach that young people are having, and how are they navigating this barrier of power? Yeah.
Yes. So I have been thinking, that's why I did not intervene at the beginning. I was just thinking. So, so regarding this, I guess the example that came to my mind, this example, I guess many of us have learned at high school in biology lessons. When there is the genotype plus the environment, it results in a certain phenotype. So if I can make it, or if I can apply it on the youth, I would say that we have this genotype which is somehow influenced and inspired by our surrounding environments, of having this everlasting passion and determination that we need to change something. And the good thing, and something that I have learned from someone in one of the sessions before, is that it's very important to understand that it's not just the engagement for the sake of engagement, but engagement for the sake of meaningful engagement. And that's what I see that many youth are doing. It's not just like, we want a seat on the table, without even having proposed solutions, without having anything. It's not this way. But many youth are actually wanting the seat on the table because they have solutions and they have been working very hard in order to achieve it. So that's the first thing, this everlasting passion and determination, which is in their genotype somehow. And in the environment, in the enabling environment around them, they try as much as possible to utilize resources in the most cost-effective manner. And by cost-effective, I do not mean financially cost-effective only, but cost-effective in terms of their times, in terms of the resources, in terms of the energy, in terms of the power, in terms of the collaboration with other stakeholders. All of this, they try to make use of all of these, like, I would say, properties of the environment around them in order to make use of the resources in the most efficient way. And that's, for example, what people have been doing in the IFMSA, where 139 national member organizations in more than 130 countries. And each one of these national member organizations have countless activities on several public health issues. Many of them, they are just doing it on their own and trying to advocate with the other stakeholders in order to influence and have action that is present and that's impacting everyone in a positive manner, not just the youth. Because we're not just fighting for the sake of the youth or fighting for the health of the youth or fighting for the meaningful engagement of the youth. I would even say we're fighting for the meaningful engagement of everyone from the stakeholders. We need to fight for the engagement of the youth. We need to fight for the engagement of older populations. We need to fight for the engagement of vulnerable groups, etc. But we need to present this opinion. And that's why this is one of the things that's very unique about the youth, is that we're not selfish in terms of our engagement. We want to engage and we want everyone else to engage, because if we speak about climate change or the climate crisis that we're facing, it's affecting everyone. So it would be extremely unfair if we're just asking for the youth engagement only, or asking for the engagement of governments only, or engagement of private sector only. No, everyone needs to be engaged, and that's what the youth are very good at, I would say.
Awesome. Mohammed, I want to dig deeper, and I want to open this up to all the panelists, so just jump in if you have an opinion here. We've been talking about all the good things of youth, what they bring to the table, why we need to include them. But what I want to know is, what are the challenges? Do we have challenges in empowering young people to take more responsibility? And what can we do about them?
I think I can weigh in on this. So the challenges, as in the person that has been working both a new culture company and also like a very old traditional company where it existed for 60 years, one of the very interesting things that I can see is that the people, they are quite interesting individuals, but the things is always back to the space, to the things that we already provided them for development, for exploration, for growth. So I think in these terms, I would say that space, do you think you understand the people inside enough? I think that's like a very important question, because every single one of us have a very different why we exist, why we are a part of a community. So in terms of giving them even more work or having space for them to grow, it's very important to start to know what they really work for and what they want the purpose of that to be.
So would you say there are challenges to empower them and we need to do better? Like what exactly are those challenges?
I think it's both way. It's like the organization's challenge as well to try to understand the people and also us as a younger generation to try to communicate what we are capable of, what we have in mind. Because sometimes that barrier is quite, sometimes it feels like it's not there, but inside, I know that there are like a lot of barrier is like, both gender barriers, generational barriers, but you need to realize and aware what that barriers are.
I want to push this further a little bit. So we're talking about challenges. Obviously, each of us are very hyper engaged, but we also see the other side of any other generation, which might feel disempowered, disenfranchised. So from your experience, like many of you would have worked with many young volunteers and young people. What are the challenges there? What can we do about them?
Yeah, I think there are three main challenges that I've faced. The first is that as a young person, and many like myself are perceived because of our age, we do not have the experience, and that we might be put either as an add-on or on the sideline of different organizations or spaces because we simply do not have enough experience. Even though by working with our communities, by starting at a very young age, we do have a unique perspective and a capacity and the understanding of bringing in meaningful changes to our people and to the companies, especially with how digitalized our world is and how easy it is to be innovative and capable. The second challenge is young people are seen as one constituency, that we are not a diverse group of people, whether diverse in terms of where we come from, of our experience. We're just simply referred to as a demographic. Yes, we are the biggest. 50% of the world's population are under 30, but at the same time, we are different. And we bring in different skills, competencies, and experiences. And we need to be acknowledged to what we are experts in, whether we are doctors, whether we are engineers, whether we are entrepreneurs, and according to that, not being put in a youth space, but being integrated in different structures. This is why, for example, last year, for the first time, the European Commission designed a sounding board of young people, 25 to be exact, to really integrate our perspectives because they were developing for the first time an action plan to work with young people beyond the EU. And this was a very healthy exercise because we were given the space to really bring in all our different perspectives. And at the same time, it is not tokenistic, it is meaningful, and we are able to influence change because we were given a space. Similar to in COP27, for the first time, we had our own pavilion. It was independently youth-led, made by young people for 2 weeks at COP, right at the heart of the negotiation zone. And we had the power to get the policymakers to speak to us and co-create solutions together.
Awesome. I want to dig a bit deeper there as well. So you talked a little bit about, and we've had this conversation around safe spaces and investing in young people. So we have different people across the room here. So we have policymakers, we have academia. And what I want to know is, what do they need to do to help create these safe spaces? What's going to be the best environment for young people to actually create change?
Can I jump in? Yeah, so I think what's really important is to build a bridge between the older generation and the younger generation. I think that's what this whole conversation revolves around, right? And I think the most important thing there is kind of an openness from an older generation to listen to young people and see things from their perspective. So we've had around last year we had like around 15 volunteers working in 9 different local government organizations across Kathmandu Valley. And what we found out there is, at the beginning, they were not really accepted by the older staff there who they were there to help. But over time, they were able to build their confidence so that these people would trust them. And at the end of those 2 months, they were able to actually work together, and that brought really good changes. Like there were volunteers who had actually helped write policies. There were volunteers who had actually helped train municipal officers. And if you can bring these two together, and for that to happen, the most important thing is to have an open mind, so that they can actually, they're willing to learn from younger people and willing to see things from their perspective, and maybe we can also try to see things from their perspective as well. So I think that's something that we need to work on.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to weigh in here?
Yeah, for me, I think for the challenge and how can we bring the youth to collaborate or to bring the powers of the youth to change the world. So I think the uniqueness of the youth is they kind of like they don't afraid to fail. Right, they don't afraid to fail, and then they kind of like the white cotton. So even the colors puts in the white color is kind of like can show the powers of this color. So I think the challenge is which or what is the color that puts in the first color that puts in, or which opportunity that they have to do the uniques or the things that it's the most empower to them. Or it's kind of like I think if we can create the space for the youths, and then bring the common of the interest that each of the youths have the difference, or the common of interest is not the same, right? And then if the older generations, or even us, that we have the organizations, or we have the space, can give them the color that they love, or the color that they can show their powers, I think it will bring them to the leader in the future.
I have time for one audience question, and I can see some thinking faces in the audience. So I'm going to chuck to the audience for one question before we wrap up and, yeah, summarize. I might run up to you, actually. Give me 1 second. Okay. That will work.
I guess that's part of the problem. The youth come chasing after us and we
Yeah, that's
run away.
right.
A lot of times when I see youth networks and active youth, people like you, I see educated, urban, young people raising their voices. How do you get youth from disadvantaged communities to join this movement? Young people who have to migrate to get jobs, young people who are suffering for their day-to-day living. How do you engage them in this movement? Sorry, Bhushan Tuladar from FHI 360.
Thank you. That's a good question, and that to answer that question, it really depends on like your on many factors, and that's one of the challenge is bringing the grassroots voices and engaging young people. So back in Fiji, what we've been trying to do really has we've seen many youth groups that are and you're true, that are centered in urban centers, and that opportunities are not decentralized, are just focused on those in the capitals. And so what we did was, now our work is working in expanding, and that's one of the first things we did was our programs, our initiative was going to go out first to the rural and remote communities. And there are challenges to that. One is it requires resources to reach out to these communities. In the Pacific, if you have to go out, you're either traveling by boat or you have to travel by plane. It's costly. Two, it's communication. We do not have infrastructures like the developed world have. And this is probably the same in many other developed countries in Africa and Latin America, including in the in small island states. So it requires a lot of resources to do this work. It requires a lot of investment. When I started this work, it was active. I was an activist. I started out of passion, and I wasn't being paid for I think 3 years doing this work, and that's where we need people like you who are sitting on the other side, from development partners, from private sector, to invest in programs that advance, that scale up the work of young people, especially in developing countries. And so if we want to bring young people from grassroots, we need to invest. We need to make deliberate attempts and actions to consult them, to hear their solutions, to hear their ideas, and then bring them to the table. And most importantly, create safe spaces where they're able to articulate their ideas and solutions. And finally, because this is an issue that I've seen in many cases, give them due respect. See them as equal partners, don't see them as beneficiaries, don't see them as young people, but see them as equal partners that can bring your projects to success and sustain that over a long period of beyond, just project timelines. Thank you.
Fantastic. We are running out of time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Omnia, to answer to that last prompt, and I'll give you 30 seconds, Mohammed, after that, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So 2 things. One is when you're doing an intervention or a campaign, bring it to them. This is important because it's not just about doing things virtually, which we tend to do now. It's also thinking about communities that are offline, especially youth from disadvantaged communities or vulnerable communities. And this is what we did. Every year we have a conference for youth, and we decided for the first time this year to start from the south of Egypt, from Aswan to Cairo, to bring in this event to these cities. And then when you empower and build the capacity of young people in these communities, we know how to do peer-to-peer education, we know how to inspire one another, and we are also well connected. So if you connect with a youth group, they will connect you with 10 others. So really, as you said, that we need to also do consultations with young people, listen, and you will be connected to these different communities.
I can confirm that each of these people are like celebrities. Like every time I walk around with them, they're like waving to everybody. So, Mohammed, 30 seconds. Wrap up.
The stress. Okay, so yes, the first thing I would say regarding I would say there are financial difficulties. It's not about just disadvantaged group, but also there are always financial difficulties. And that's why I would say that it's very important for donors, private sectors, NGOs, whoever has like some kind of, I would say, or can provide financial support, try to provide it on the grassroots level. And I would say sometimes if there is a clear plan for the meaningful youth engagement from the governmental level, go for it. If not, there are many governments worldwide that are quite corrupt. So please try to work on the grassroots level and support the youth directly. That's the first thing. The second thing, we need to adopt the mindset of the decolonization of global health. We cannot be working just for the sake people living in a certain area are better than other people, so we will just engage those. People learning in certain universities are better than other youth, so we'll just engage those. So we just need to adopt this mindset of the decolonization, because it was mentioned yesterday in the presentation about the Prince Mahidol Award and everything. It was mentioned that at some year there was this when women would be able to vote. We are able to not discriminate people or not differentiate between people based on their gender. We're somehow able not to do it based on their race. We're able not to do it based on their ethnicity, etc. Why are we still unable to do it based on their age? There is nothing. We don't need to discriminate people based on their age. We're able to do it. We're able to avoid discrimination based on other areas. So let's avoid discrimination based on age as well, and based on your socioeconomic status or wherever you come from. Because this is not my issue, where I was born, where I live. These are just social determinants of health for anyone who knows about health. These are things that we just can't control, but we need to adapt to. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, so today we have heard all about young people, right? We've heard about the unique approaches they've had, how they've had very innovative, the entrepreneurial action, but also the fact that they just have a passion to really go about and change the world. We've also heard about some of the challenges that there has been in engaging young people and what the system can actually do about changing that. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to give this panel a huge round of applause for everything that we've learned today. And what we're going to do next is the exciting part. So I'm going to get everyone to come off the stage now. Thank you very much. And I see some people sitting at the back. So this next part of the activity, we're going to get everybody to come to the front round tables. On each of the tables, you'll see that there are different topics. So there's things like air pollution, mental health, carbon credits. And so we're going to start to group ourselves around these tables. And we're going to have the opportunity to chat with each of these young experts here on the stage with me and really get to co-design solutions actively with them. So yeah, I'll get everybody to stand up and get around the tables, and then we'll get going. I'll walk you through each one. Yes, definitely.
I'm Bhushan. I'm an environmental engineer by training. I work on SHI 360 senior program in Nepal.
Okay. So I hope you got the opportunity to just chat quickly in your tables. Now we're going to jump straight into the next section. There we go. So last year, we undertook at Future Minds a massive project with philanthropy to invest $14 million into engaging disadvantaged youth. So we did a study with 80 organizations that engage young people. We mapped the barriers, created impact investment frameworks, but most importantly, our research that was conducted led us to design a new model of understanding youth engagement. What we know is that Gen Z and millennials are a very, very active generation. But activity is at two ends of a spectrum. Either they're extremely eager and already participating, or, and I think I need some water. Can I grab some water? Or they're so disenfranchised that they don't try at all. This is what happens when you speak for a living.
That's what he does. He speaks for a living. He said he speaks for a living.
Okay, I'm back. Cool. So when we're looking at youth engagement, our research uncovered this key diagram, right? We're looking at here, and it says decisions, influence, and actions. The further we move up the pyramid, the harder it gets for youth to engage because of one key element we discovered: power, right? So at the bottom of the pyramid, there are virtually no power barriers that are going to stop youth from engaging tomorrow. But as we slowly move up to the top, there are more and more power barriers that come in which prevent engagement from happening. So these are things like institutional barriers, not being able to be a decision maker in parliament, right? Operational barriers, or just discrimination in general, or the lack of respect that Lagi talked about as well. Often we look at things and say, oh, they are young change makers, or young leaders, or young experts. Well, actually, no, they're just experts. They're just leaders. They're just change makers, right? And so this model was really interesting for us because we found that young people can only really engage at the top, where we want them to engage, if they can shift power or they're in power. And that's something that's really difficult for the average young person to do. They have to fight and fight and fight until they get up there. So I want to give you an example of what I mean by each of these things, right? When we look at decisions, when we look at decision making, it's about being in power, right? So for young people, it would look like them being a member of parliament, a board director. It would look like them voting on policies as a member of government, or being the CEO of a company. Pictured here is the youngest prime minister elected in the world, Sanna Marin from Finland. And this is a great example of decision-making power. We also have influence. Influence is about working with power. And so that looks like being a direct advisor to government. It looks like lobbying. It looks like shaping policy at COP27, right? And we know for a fact that young people have been influence making, right? We see Greta Thunberg and climate policy. But often, one of the discoveries that we've found is these systems are so hard to shift that even when young people actually get to this stage of influence making, they're not taken seriously. So they'll shift down a level where they can make greater change. Case in point with Greta. Even though she advises world leaders about climate policy, she actually spends more time mobilizing hundreds and thousands of young people in action making, doing countless climate strikes, protests, campaigns, and advocacy. And so at the very bottom pyramid of power, we then have action making, right? Action making is about changing power with small steps, individual actions. It's things like changing diets for the environment. It's things like leading social movements, about running campaigns, protesting, and in general, just being able to elevate young people's voices. And Malala here is a great example of this. So at the start, before I choked on my water, I talked about extremities, right? So the reason that we have either hyper-youth engagement or either disenfranchised youth is because of the effort it takes to shift power. And so when we're inviting young people to create solutions together, we need to consider how many hurdles do they have to jump before they can get involved. Sure, young people want to change the world, but if they have to run 100 marathons before they can get there, and even when they do, nothing happens, why get involved? So let's think about what are the power dynamics at play when we're looking at these solutions. The last thing that we discovered with our research was that the best youth engagement only comes when you're operating on at least 2 levels at once, not just the one. And so we look at examples of Lagi, for example, with the Pacific Island Climate Action Network, who partners with decision-making so that influence-making of the lobbying and the activism has a greater scale of impact. And so what we find is that youth engagement, if it's only working on one level, like influence making or just action making, the impact isn't meaningful to young people. So we got to think about how can we connect these things together, even if we can get all three, which is like the optimal scenario. And so that comes to lesson 2, right? Something that we've learned is young people are engaged in all of these ways. They're not disengaged. They're just differently engaged. Where the change effectively stops and where we find challenge, like what we talked about in the panel, is when young people feel like they can no longer fight this power, when they feel like they don't have a safe space, when they feel like it's not accessible to make change. And that's when the light switches off. And so this is the exciting part, all right? This is an invitation to co-create between generations. I can tell you now that this sort of activity costs companies tens and thousands of dollars just to get young experts in the room and spend an hour telling you all about Gen Z trends and behavior. You walk away, you gain insight, and that's it, right? You don't get to talk to a real human, design with them, challenge them, create ideas, or even validate that they will work. And so take this opportunity, the Avengers are here to help you, and dig deeper. Ask them questions, share your expertise across the generations. So we're going to start with the first activity, right? I want to quickly share also that this co-design process takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, and we're doing it in a little over 20 minutes. So it's going to be scrappy, all right? We have to think on our feet. We're going to make quick decisions. The first step of good co-design is being able to understand and define what are the barriers. So we're going to start by laying all the cards on the table, right? What is stopping you right now from engaging with youth? What is your ideal world where you engage with them? For this activity, I'll first get you to turn to the person on your left or your right in pairs, introduce yourself, and then start to write down these barriers on a post-it note and put it on the paper or in front of the table. Put it on the table in front of you. I got there eventually. All right? So we have 2 minutes for this activity, and I'll keep time. We ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hey everyone, one quick thing. I've realized we don't have post-it notes on the table at the moment. So what you can do instead is just use that piece of paper in front of you, or feel free to use these large butcher's papers canvas here and just start to sketch them out in your pairs. Thanks. Oh, it's already been All right, time to wrap up. 20 seconds to go. All right, time's up. Okay, so we are running a bit behind time, so I'm going to move things a bit faster right now. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with as many ideas as possible to tackle some of the barriers that we've identified. So what we'll need to do before that is we want to come together as a group and start to discuss those barriers, start grouping them, and then we'll come up with as many ideas as possible. So if your table, for example, is air pollution, you want to start thinking about what are the new programs, initiatives, board directorships, activities that you can involve young people in to tackle air pollution. What we often do wrong here in this stage is we have constraints. So I want you to think bigger. Think that you have unlimited money, trillions of dollars, and unlimited time to implement this program. What will you do? Be specific, don't be vague. All right, I'm going to give everybody 10 minutes to start coming up with as many ideas as possible, and we want quantity, not quality. All right? Awesome. 10 minutes starts now. Okay, so we're at 6 minutes now, so we want to wrap up the barriers and start to answer some of these questions when we're creating ideas. And what I'd invite all of you to do is feel free to stand up, walk around, if that makes you more creative, and start to star some of your favorite ideas in the group. Awesome. Let's keep going. 5 minutes to go.
Science, and we had social media influencers, right? But any other ideas? Where we did like young people. We have three ideas. Any more ideas?
Like startups.
Okay, perfect. Any other solutions or initiatives?
Like capacity who are living in disadvantaged communities, right? So I'm just going to write down. We have like
System, the education systems are very rigid, I would say. They need so much of reform in terms of the curricula, in terms of like how even they present or how they deliver the curricula itself or the education system. Yes. Yes. Where to ask? Okay. Yes. Perfect.
we have six ideas right now. First is citizen science. Do you like this?
I can also. Yeah, I mean, it's about
And you need to make sure the consultations are also taken into consideration. Because many times you do the consultation and the recommendation, then no nothing is taken back. So yeah, anything else you want to add?
to be involved in this voluntary season monitoring. They ask this question how this works or whether it's a lot of electricity, or Wi-Fi connection in some part, like send instructions and etc. And that's why and the willingness of young people or like they have this wish to so this is something that can be isolated on the sensors. And then what is more important, data analysis, because there are specialists. It's not common to have data analysis, and then do something with the data. And
Yes.
then I think it comes also to the phase, because we have data, do something, because just having data, like it's nothing. Maybe a high concentration, what is it? Has it high concentration?
Yes.
High concentration, like a 2.5, whatever it is. I'm okay. Like I don't feel it. That's why I guess this
Right.
element to the
And then all of
the air quality monitoring network, sensor
as citizen science
Yes.
can analyze data.
Yes.
Yes, well, this is what I.
Yes. Yes. I would say because like it's more of like concrete things I'm doing at the moment. So for example, one of the things regarding the policy is one of the things I introduced in the country office in WHO is a meaningful youth engagement strategy for the next 3 years that we're currently working on in terms of like how to engage the youth, not just in one activity or just one initiative and that's it and we're done, but just like the concept itself. How can we make sure that like it's already it's the norm? Because like in terms of outcomes, we need to reach that the norm is that youth are engaged, not something that we need to call for over and over again. That's one thing. The other thing is that, for example, there is something that we've been doing in the health system, vulnerability and adaptation assessment. So for this,
Okay, wonderful people. We are going to start moving faster. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I will explain it. I won't stop.
Okay, so the next stage is combining ideas, and I'm only going to give you 3 minutes for this. And what we want to do is, with all the ideas that we've shaped together, we want to put them together and take the best of both worlds. So essentially, when it comes to co-design, one of the things that we use is called the yes and approach. Actually, let me demonstrate this with someone. Can I get an audience volunteer? Over there? All right, come up with me. I'll bring a microphone. All right. It's nothing stressful. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, so the yes and approach is effectively a way for us to get more creative and to open our minds to ideas. So what I'm going to get you to do, what's your name?
Itoro.
Itoro. I'm going to get you to ask me a question. The question is, remember that time we went to PMAC? And then I'm going to answer yes and then you're going to answer yes and we're going to keep going as long as we can. Does that make sense? Like, we can do a demo and see how it goes. Okay.
Remember that time we went to PMAC?
Yes, and we had this amazing conference with this very handsome guy called Nathaniel. And you go.
Yes, and he was dressed really snazzy and...
Yes, and I made a really good friend called Itoru.
Yes, and she was super cool and talking about youth integration.
Yes, and we got to really look into the intersections of climate change and health.
Are we still playing? Okay.
Good, good. That was a lot better than I expected. Okay, we're going to try it again, but we're going to just say no. Okay, so you start. I'll ask you the question. I'll say, remember the time we went to PMAC? And you say?
No.
We talked a lot about climate change and health.
No, I don't remember that.
You see how that's very different? Yeah? Thank you so much, Itoru. Thank you for the demonstration. All right, so that's the yes and approach, and that's what we want to use when we're combining our ideas. We want to allow for these creative ideas to keep building and building and building. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and what we're going to do is we're going to answer these questions. How might we take the best of both solutions or the 10 solutions that you have on your table and mend them together? And how might we think about integrating those different levels of youth engagement that we talked about earlier together as well? So we have 3 minutes, and we're going to start now. Thanks, everybody.
I will explain the idea later. We don't have time. So yeah, just to summarize quickly what we have mentioned here. So change the human resources strategy and increase the number of the young people engaged. Follow the recommendations of the Lancet Commission as mentioned in the education in terms of the informative, formative, and performative, intergenerational mentorship and training, having youth consultations, and having youth as part of the policy itself, clarity regarding the problem, and having an intersectoral working with an intersectoral lens and ensuring the diversity in what we're doing. So these are like the concepts of solution. What about how can we combine them into one single thing? maybe we can make the sequence. So first of all, we need to understand the problem. So clarity regarding actually what we are tackling, what we are addressing here. So that's the first thing. So, and then what would be the next thing that we would do? We're now going to have a strategy for working on like having the meaning as the norm, as I mentioned. First of all, we need to understand what's the problem in general in terms of the team comprehension. And what will be next from the ideas that we have. Yes, the consultations in order to help us identify the problem. Okay, perfect. So, what will be next? Would it be better if I put it here? I'm not sure if you see it, but I can read it. Yeah, I know.
They cannot have
So we'll add one more thing.
Is that enough time or do we need more time? Need more time? All right. We're scheduled to be 5 minutes late for the coffee break, so just letting you all know. But we can extend for 2 more minutes for this activity. All right. Okay, time's up. All right. So, I was talking to some of the tables and they were telling me that young people move too fast, which I agree with, but I'm unapologetic about it. So, the last activity that we're going to run is we're going to have, I lied, it's not 12 minutes, we're going to have 10 minutes to build an action plan, okay? So, Now we're going to scale everything down and we're going to build a practical solution. We've been operating in these few minutes with unlimited resources and unlimited time. Now, we have no time, no money, and we have to run it for 10 young people, all right? I see some of you like nodding your heads in the background because this is such a real life experience. We go to our boss, our government, and we're like, what's the budget? And they're like, there's no budget. But we trust you to try it and make something new, okay? So we're gonna try it for 10 young people and see how it goes. So we're thinking about the practical steps now. This will be some of your guidance. So we'll look at what is the engagement model that we're gonna use, how we're gonna address those power barriers we're talking about, who are you gonna work with in terms of partners, when will you run it, and what will you need to do that. So 10 minutes starts now.
next one here? Well, of course, ideally, like 5 years. But at least to start acting, yes, and to 1 year enough.
Starting, I've never actually been involved with designers. Of course. But as a starting point, we should find some kind of outline what's the objective. What's the different components research questions, have an action plan.
Okay, we're almost halfway through this component. So I'm just going to let every table know that we are going to have 1 minute to share our ideas in just a moment. But we still have halfway to go, and I'll let you keep going.
But I think it needs to be flexible. So as you go, as you still have an engagement, then you have to but once you go with the plan, you need to be able to like
And you're challenged during the
Flexible
plan
protocol. That's not rigid.
Yeah.
I think talking statistics and talking stories and use that to communicate, right? About the importance. That's very important. Using the stories, the data, right? That would create like a very powerful evidence.
There's a lot of,
I think we have a lot of elements that we need to like streamline together.
kind of fits under citizen science, but there's a whole lot of qualitative improvements around capturing lived experience. I don't know that participate in video gaming would get a very valid not essentially citizen science, but I think it's I think it complements quite nicely.
The question is very good. So, how does it address some of the power barriers? Any idea? Just have a big plan, sort of plan
Okay, time's up. So, we were supposed to do this as well for 5 minutes, but I'm gonna give you a minute and a half, because I'm very evil. This is the most important question of all, right? Out of all the solutions that we've created, making them big, saying yes and then making them practical, does it solve the initial problem with young people? Let's come back to our barriers and see how our solutions are actually addressing them. So I'll give you all a minute and a half to chat within your groups and answer this question.
I would say tools, like, because like I really like the concept about like what exactly is the problem. Because for me, the problem is like it has many contributing factors. It's a big problem. But for example,
Yes. Yeah. Although,
all of this
as a youth expert, it's like
almost everything. But in case, for example, let's say if it's a corrupt system, it just wouldn't work. It's just like, no, we're not doing all of it. So there are some things that I would say, you know, when there are different determinants, it's not just a risk factor and a disease. You can apply the same for like this area specific. That is not just like there's not making right. But we also need to identify the determinants of the determinants of how healthy people are. So yeah, I would say
I think it's happening in a lot of places now. Universities have youth panels, especially when they're developing programs around health targets.
Some like other barriers are great. We need to tackle with bigger organizations.
That's why.
not just not just this
All right, let's go. Sharing time. Whew, I feel like I'm exercising, running up and down. Okay, so we are in a rush, so we do not have 10 minutes to share today, but I would love to invite each table to share with me in a minute your elevator pitch of what you have created and what ideas you have to engage young people in a different way. Does anyone want to go first for this activity? Oh, keen beans. All right, take it away. Do you need a microphone? Oh, you got one. Awesome.
Got it. Great. Sorry. Representing the carbon credit group. Yay. We had a very maybe older side, so it took us a minute. But what we agreed on was that we wanted to gamify the idea of how you calculate carbon credits at a local level, and that you form a platform with stakeholders from the older and the younger group. And what you're going to do is encourage people to learn how to calculate carbon credits in their home, on their farm. And if you are able to change behavior, you can see in the game how you're having a positive impact at reducing carbon credit. And the idea is you can share those credits and win a benefit in the platform. What we want to do is bring the older group in by holding a workshop so they fully understand the game, because we know the younger people will adopt quickly, but we want to have a common supportive environment. Now, we want to set a target of 100 metric tons so that there's a win. Last point.
We don't see this carbon credit as the end result, but to open the conversation about how you improve the impact on the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. And I love how you got practical with the workshop as that first step, because often we need to sit down with young people to understand what they're going through before we can even come up with this big game. So that's a really good practical step. All right, who's next? Any volunteers? Or I will be that teacher that you all hate, and I'll pick on some people. All right, this table, beautiful.
Yes. So like me as a youth, so this table is about the air pollution, and the first thing that I want to talk about is the barrier, because we were discussing and we think that the youth, they're not taking it seriously. So like what we need to do is that we need young people to expert in the air pollution thing, and about that we need to use the citizen science. Like we could do the youth to do the data collecting and analyzing the data, and after that we could do the data into the lobbying in the government level. It's like we could and I'm sorry. I'm so nervous, sorry. And we can communicate in the social media level. It's like the thing that I thought about is that some shocking stories. So like it was about like months ago in Thailand, there were news about a young graduated doctor. He got lung cancer because of the PM 2.5, and it's like to simplify and visualize the importance and the impact of air pollution. And I think we could use that to, get the young people and people who are not highly educated to understand the importance of this. And then we use that, after that we have the power and we could.
Time is up.
Thank you for
sharing. Thank you. All right. Okay, who else wants to share their first practical step for this idea?
We had a good idea. We had a good idea together.
Omnia, take us away.
So we had a practical idea because we saw that there is a gap between the interaction with young people and experienced mentors. And what we had is to create an intergenerational reference group, which means to every institution and organization, we have a group that not just have young people, but also has mentors and experts to both exchange values, to exchange experience, to exchange also digital tools, a way to really include both young people in decision making and leadership boards, and ultimately include other like older people in the way that we do social and political movements.
Awesome. Thanks, Omnia. All right. Mohammed, I'm going to pick on you next. You can't make the young people do all the work. Come on.
Okay, so in terms of like what we need to do or what we need to work on, we had a plan or like a general plan in which we will start with having youth consultations youth consultations with an intersectoral lens and ensuring the diversity of the youth in order to come up with the clarity regarding what is our problem in terms of youth engagement. And then we will be following the science and evidence in terms of the recommendations of Lancet Commission regarding the informative, formative, and transformative learning. This would help us organize intergenerational mentorship and training programs in order to include the youth in the policy design and the policy making in an evidence-based format. And this would help us change the human resources strategy and increase the number of the young people engaged. All of this under the umbrella of the systems thinking. That's it.
Awesome. The first one to keep to time. Very nice. Very nice. All right. We have Lagi and Bam's table left, I believe. You guys ready? Who's going to fight for it? Bam? Okay. Over to you.
Hi, so we are from the Youth and Workforce group, and our problems are that, as you can see, all right. Okay, so youth might lack experiences, and these three groups together creates social norm problems. And then we also have the problem of people in power oppression, and we have a lack of safe space for youth to give their opinions, and we also have a lack of heterogeneity in youth in power as well.
So we found it really surprising that since we are one of the biggest population of youth in the world currently, but we are so less, I mean, we are represented in companies and in organizations, so in a low amount. So we thought we could come up with a problem that is, these problems could be solved through a youth network or like inclusive of all people from all races and all genders in a youth network, which would have platforms and systems that are made and people in the group from all skill levels could be all skills could be developed. So it could be like an incubator for the youth programs, and we could come up with efficiency and working deliverables for the government and private sectors. So we came up with a model.
So we came out with the model. So we want to focus on 10 youth group leaders. We were inspired by one of our members' project, which is called the Cambodia Green Future, which is part of the FHI 360s. So we are focusing on the three tiers on interactive engagement. First is at the policy level, second is at the family, and the final one is at in the individual level. So we will held consultation with youth from in individual level and with the family, and that consultation will be grouped and teamed into and presented at the by youth at the policy level. And so we are going to mobilize our resources. We want to spend 30% of the resource to support youth with inequitable access. So we recognize that youth being heterogeneity, they are youth that cannot be represented well. So we want to spend, we will call it an equity fund to give an equal access to youth, and also the 70% will be given to the in IT infrastructure and social network. And we will do this with in partnership with the governmental sector and organization and also the civil society.
Thank you. All right. The lucky last. We have Lucky.
Thank you. Our group had so many great ideas. One was around a problem of, we're the mental health group, and one was around a problem of young people sort of not seeing results of their actions or feeling a bit powerless. So we had a suggestion to work within existing social movements. So people kind of get a sense of identity from contributing to this and feeling like they're being a part of something bigger than themselves. We also talked a lot about how we can work to get resources for our movement through the private sector, tapping into sort of corporate social responsibility, also working with NGOs or media partners, and looking at research institutions as well. And then we wanted to use our resources to create a media campaign. We talked about how in a lot of settings, sort of stigmatization around mental health is a real barrier to action, and that education and lack of sort of knowledge around mental health was a barrier in a lot of areas. And then also two other really important points. One was around listening and encouraging people in positions of power to listen to young people. And then another around having potentially quotas or target percentages of youth involvement in conferences and in other representative bodies as well. I think that was everything.
Thank you. Awesome. Give a big round of applause to everyone's ideas. Okay, time for wrap up. Can I get the slides up for a second? Awesome. So what we've done today is we've gone through this design process, right? We spent time emphasizing with the problem and took time to really understand this area. I'm really bad at circling. Okay, then we defined the barriers and we listed them out. We laid all the cards on the table. We then started to ideate new projects over here. Oh, there we go. Over there. right? And then we prototyped them and got the opportunity to learn from each other, to spark new ideas. We didn't get enough time to prototype because, as I said, this is sort of a 2-hour or 2-month process. But we got to test it very quickly. And the most important part of all was we got to actually get feedback from the youth experts. And we got to hear about the insights that can help us redefine how we see the problem. A lot of the time we go through these activities and we have fantastic ideas, but then we get to a point where we reflect back and think, is this actually solving the initial problem? Can young people actually engage, given that we have these power systems and structures in play? And having that opportunity, even if it was for 2 minutes, to answer that question is one of the most important parts of the process. Because with this process, as you'll see, you're always moving back and forward. It's not one linear pathway where you figure it out straight away and you get to test and you launch, right? You get to prototype and you realize, actually, this isn't the problem that we want to solve. You come back, you ideate again, you prototype again, and then you launch. And so, without knowing it, we went through this entire process. We went through co-design as well, and we went through this entire spectrum. And actually, we went beyond co-design. Co-design is very much about understanding and designing a solution from start to finish. But we went further into a term that we call co-collaboration at Future Minds. Essentially, we went through a focused approach that isn't just about designing solutions of young people, but seeing them as equal collaborators and partners who guide us throughout the entire process. I want to thank all of you for being here today. It's been lovely hearing all of your ideas. One of the last things that I want to do with you is I want to get the opportunity to leave you with everything that we have talked about today. So this QR code is everything you need. It's going to summarize what we've talked about. It's going to put in those youth engagement models that we were talking about and those processes. And it'll also link to some of the contact details of the speakers. So the catch is you can only do it right now because the link is going to expire after this talk. But nothing is free in life, as you'll find out. So it'll ask you a few quick questions, and then you have access to all the resources in about a week or so. But without further ado, or to conclude, thank you everybody for being here, and I can't wait to hear what you get up to next. Thanks everyone. Oh, one last thing, sorry. Our partners, FHI, and the amazing youth champions in the room. We wouldn't be able to do this session if you didn't care about young people and young people's issues. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you to the youth experts as well, and for PMAC, and just for everyone being so open-minded about what we can do to come together and create change across generations. Thank you, everybody.